leave this place, we can do all that is asked of us to bring you glory. In Jesus' name, amen. You know, my day kind of started off almost as a living example of the parable. As I got up and was getting ready and was wandering around the house, wondering, where was I all? And, so I kind of felt like I lived this story of seeking and trying to find and all that already this morning. I guess God has a strange sense of humor. He wanted to make sure I was in the right frame of mind. But be that as it may, I want to tell you a story about this boss of this big company. He was working on the weekend, and he ran into a problem with this project he was trying to formulate, and he knew there was only one person in the whole company that could help him get through this problem. Now, he didn't like bothering his employees on the weekend, but this was just something that was crucially important to the company, so he decided, I just got to call. So he picks up the phone and he calls this employee at home, and he hears this little whispered voice on the other end saying, and the boss says, is your daddy home? And the little voice goes, yes. Can I talk to him? And the boss is like, okay, I really need to talk to him, but I've got a little cutesy child. What am I going to do? I know, ask your mom. Is your mommy there? Yes. Can I talk to her? No. Well, is there anybody else there I could possibly talk to? Figuring, well, maybe if there's an older sister or somebody, I could get one of them on the phone and they'll get Dad for me. And the little voice goes, yes. And he says, well, who else is there? He says, the policeman. Oops. So the boss is starting to get a little worried. He's like, there's a cop there. I wonder why the cop's there. He says, can I talk to the policeman? The little voice goes, no, he's busy. He says, okay, well, why is he busy? He's talking to Mommy and Daddy and the fireman. There's a fireman there too? Yes. Well, just about that time in the background, he heard this big kind of like whooshing sound. Kind of like some sound coming over. Okay, where's the spot I have to stand at this thing? If I lean this way, does it stop? Anyway, there's this big whooshing sound. And he says, what's that? And he says, that's the helicopter. He says, there's a helicopter there too? He says, yes. They just landed the search team. And he says, there's a search team? What are they there looking for? Me. Well, hopefully nobody here has ever had that kind of experience. But I'm sure we've all had those moments in time where we've experienced, something that's lost. Or something we desperately needed to find and it just wasn't there. Sometimes it is our kids. I mean, I'm sure we've all got stories of those moments when, we had one early on with our son CJ. We were at the Walmart in Abington, and we were like right there, and he was doing what every little kid does, duck in and out of the clothes, and oh, you can't see me. And the next thing we realized, he wasn't there, and he wasn't there, and we kind of looked over our shoulders, and he's like making a beeline to the front door, halfway across the store. So of course, like every parent, you kind of drop and you start to run. Unfortunately, the guy handing out, the smiley stickers was smart enough and alert enough that, no, this little child probably shouldn't be going out into the parking lot right now. That would not be a good thing. Just that momentary moment of feeling that sense of loss, like where did they get to? I mean, I still remember I couldn't have been more than about 7 or 8, in the old King's department store in Hagerstown. Going there with my mom and dad and somehow getting separated from them and making my way up front, because I knew that the people up front at the cash registers, I was old enough to know that they could help me, and I knew my name. And I remember them, we had this little lost boy, and almost I could remember to tell them about my mom though, because she was Mom. I didn't know her name, I just knew my name. My name was Victor. And could somebody please come find Victor at the front desk, kind of thing. But all I can remember about my mom is I kept telling me she has this big puffy hair. Because she went to this time period where she wore wigs. And I was but I still can remember that moment of just feeling like, where are they? Or have you ever been driving somewhere and suddenly you realize you have no clue where you're at or how to get where you want to go? And even though the GPS is saying go that way, you're like, can't go that way. A couple months ago, I was down in the city, and I'd gone to the University Hospital, and somehow or another, I missed my turn to get back up. And I did. I ended up in a part of Baltimore I didn't know existed. And it was just like, I had no idea how I got there, kept saying go this way, and you couldn't go that way because, road work, or it was blocked off, or it was a one-way street. And I knew eventually, Baltimore's big, but I knew eventually I'd get out of the city somehow. I finally saw the stadium and sort of worked my way back in, thank God for that. But there's something about feeling lost, disconnected, cut off, not sure where you're at or where you're going, that can be very traumatic, whether it's something or someone that we've lost, or maybe in our own life. And sometimes it's not just the sense of being lost because of not knowing where you're at. Sometimes it's an emotional and spiritual thing. Sometimes we hit a place in our life where we just feel like, what's going on here? We feel disconnected. We feel cut off. We look at all the smiling faces around us and we think, well, that's just not me right now. I wish I had the happy pill that they're on, or I wish I knew what was making them feel so good, because we feel this sense of being disconnected, of feeling lost. Sometimes that feeling of being lost comes from the fact that we don't have a community or faith, or we don't have a family, or we're just going through stuff and it feels like there's nobody around, we're all alone. Well, these couple parables today kind of talk about that idea of someone or something being lost, and the need for it to be reconnected, or for it to be found again. And it talks about that great joy that comes when that finally happens. When you misplace your child, you're really excited. Well, most of the time, I guess. You're really excited when you find them again and you bring them back in the family. When you've lost your wallet, or you've lost your keys, or you finally get back on the right way to home, you're excited, you're happy, you're joyful, because something has made it possible for you to reconnect, to no longer be lost, to make it back to where you want to be, or need to be. Well, the incredible thing for us as people of faith is that we have a God who is like the ultimate finder. It's always a good thing to know that God is it. You remember playing, we're playing out there, and somebody always had to be it, and the person who was it was always the person who was the finder. They were always a seeker. Well, thanks be to God that God is always willing to be it, because God is the ultimate finder, the ultimate seeker, the one who reaches out and looks for us no matter where we're at, no matter what we've done, no matter what's happening in our life. God says no matter who you are, He says, I had a hand in creating you. I started everything in motion way back when. I had the concept and the idea for you, just as you are, no matter where you're at, no matter where you've been, no matter what you've done with that life that I've blessed you with, I'm still going to look for you to try and connect with you, to bring you back into the fold, to reach out to you and let you know that you're one of mine, and I care for you, and I love you. And it's a love that goes beyond, anything sometimes we can understand. Sometimes it's really hard to accept that love too, because it's just a love that says, I'm there for you, no matter what. Hemingway wrote a story, a little short story called The Capital of the World. And in it he talks about a Spanish father that wants to reconcile with a son named Paco. And he had run off to Madrid, and he had no way of finding him. So he got the bright idea that I will put an ad in the paper, one of these kind of big full-page ads that you see sometimes. And in the ad he said, Paco, meet me at the Hotel Montana at noon on Tuesday. All is forgiven. Love, Papa. Well, Tuesday morning rolls around, Papa gets ready, he heads down to the hotel, and out in the courtyard in front of this big hotel, there's like 800 guys, all named Paco. Paco apparently was a common name. But the amazing thing is all of these people who had something that had disconnected them from the Father were there. All because in the note it said, all is forgiven. See, there weren't any strings attached. It wasn't all is forgiven if you do this. All is forgiven, if you come home and you pay back the $50 you borrowed. All is forgiven if you come back and you clean up your room. All is forgiven if you swear, never to do these 73 things again. All is forgiven. It wasn't that kind of love that was being offered. It was an example, really, in a sense of the kind of love that God offers. He says, look, just come back to me. Put your foot on the pathway back to me, and all is forgiven. Say that you're trying to make that journey back home to be connected with me and with a community of faith, and all is forgiven. no strings attached. The hard part is, especially for us humans, is sometimes we like strings. You know, it's kind of like that, that little asterisk that shows up sometimes when you're buying something. You know, you're getting this wonderful deal, and you see the little asterisks, and you have to read all the fine print at the bottom that sort of makes you not maybe feel so good anymore about what you're buying, because you get the real truth down there. You know, you find out what the strings are to this good deal. Yeah, it's a great low monthly payment, but you got to do it for 3,000 years, kind of thing, and it doesn't sound so good anymore. Well, scholars who like to figure out, where do those kinds of phrases or ideas come from, they think it comes from back in the ancient day when parchments would be rolled up and they'd be tied up with a string. In the ancient Babylonian Talmud, going like really old here, there's a story of how a bill of divorce could be given, well, in that day and time, could be given to the female. And what some people would want to do is they would say when they gave it, it kind of held onto the string, as if to say, well, I can take it back if I want. And so that idea of strings attached was like, well, I'm not really going to let you go. I'm going to put all these strings to this divorce. And that has kind of come over into our common language to help us understand that idea then when, I say I love you, but there's some strings attached to it. I say I forgive you, but there's some strings attached to it. I say I want to be your friend, but there's some strings attached to us. But thanks be to God, we have a God who cuts the strings. He says there are no strings attached. Like the father who said in the newspaper article, all is forgiven, God says to us, all is forgiven, just show up. Just show up and you're forgiven. No strings attached. There's another story that speaks of love and forgiveness. This time it's a story between a mother and a daughter. And I tried to find the author of this one, but couldn't. But it's from a little short story entitled The Rock. And it tells the story of a teenage girl who just kind of had the tumultuous, I'm going to find that spot yet. It's moving. Tumultuous years of teenage life, she just seemed like one thing after another, just to upset the family, to, go in the wrong direction. And finally she had like her third DUI, ended up in jail. Mom goes to jail, bells are out, scene flashes forward next morning. Mother and daughter are sitting there in the kitchen. Without saying a word, the mother hands her a little box. It's been all wrapped and got a pretty ribbon on it, and the daughter takes it and opens it. And inside, there's a little rock. And the daughter at first is just kind of like, that's cute, but I don't get it. And the mother says, read the card. And the card says, this rock is more than 200 million years old. That's how long it will take before I ever give up on you. You see, that's an unconditional, no strings attached kind of love. That's the kind of love that the Father had for us when He gave us His Son, and He says, I'm willing to allow a part of myself die so that all might be forgiven. That's the kind of love that says, no matter who you are, where you're at, what you've done, how long it takes, or how many times I have to forgive, I will be here for you. That's the kind of love that the Father models for us when He says, all is forgiven, come home. All is forgiven, it's time to be found. All is forgiven, no strings attached. Be a part of the family of God, be a part of His family of faith. All is forgiven. The challenge for us, as people of faith, is that kind of forgiveness and love that we are called to model too. And it's hard, and it's difficult. And sometimes we wonder, will we ever be able to live up to that high standard? What we have to remember is that it's God in us providing the ability, the strength, the grace to make it happen. On our own, we can't. But with God's help, we can. All is forgiven. No strings attached. For 200 million years and more, God says, I will seek you and I will find you when you are forgiven. Thanks be to God.